Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. And the talk this week, like last week, is politics. New York City and New York State style. And it's about the news and news media too. We'll talk again about winners and losers. We talked about Mike Bloomberg and on trial. We'll talk about Andrew Cuomo being in the stratosphere. We'll talk Second Avenue subway and transportation and infrastructure. We'll talk about the climbing crime rate and problems with the NYPD. We'll talk about gerrymandering in Albany. And we'll be talking about blogging, editing, and pontificating once again. Joining us again this week is Adam Lisberg. Adam is the editor of City Hall, The Capitol, and the City and State First Read. Before joining Manhattan Media this past April, Adam was the City Hall bureau chief at the New York Daily News from 2008 to 2011, and a beat reporter at the News before that. He came to the News from The Record in Bergen County, New Jersey, my paper, I get it delivered to me, and before that at the Burlington, Vermont Free Press. Welcome back, Adam.
Glad to be here.
Okay, let's just recap what we did last week. Last week, we talked about Mike Bloomberg. We talked about John Haggerty. We talked about winners and losers. We talked about the media. We talked about blogging. We talked about a lot of things.
Yeah.
But we ended up with beginning to talk about 2013. And you talked about the presence or lack of presence of Mike Bloomberg in the race, in the sense what Mike Bloomberg will be in that race. And then we were going to talk about the Dems and the reps. Go.
There's a fascinating poll from New York One Marist that came out recently that said that 47 or 48% of registered voters in New York say they'd be less likely to vote for mayor for someone who had Mike Bloomberg's endorsement.
Yeah, but he got a 50% approval. You know, his numbers seem to be going up.
He's finally up to 54 after being in the 30s and 40s.
Right. I mean, Irene helped him out.
So he's still, there's some, I don't know if it's buyer's remorse or people just are tired of him or people sense that he's tired of being mayor. Some combination of that. He's not clicking with the city right now. Now, I suspect those poll results are not going to be valid in 2013. When people are starting to think about a new mayor, I doubt people will be ready to run him out of town on a rail. More likely, just my gut, people will start to feel a little nostalgic and say, well, the city is better than it was when he came in, and yeah, there was this and that, but he was okay. People like sort of a forgiveness narrative. So I think his endorsement will, in fact, be valuable, but it's more interesting as a snapshot what now of people.
Okay, what's the attitude about, you talked about, alluded early, or late in the conversation, that there was this political establishment and social and economic and business establishment that wants a Mike Bloomberg type candidate in 2013.
Right, and I think they've given up on trying to find one. There are various attempts to recruit some rich outsider who could self-fund,
right?
Because that's what it takes to get into the game this late. But
and they're pushing Ray Kelly as a Republican.
Kelly and anybody rich and unaffiliated with anything in particular.
Right.
Pushes potential Republican
Why?
candidates.
What is it about the Dems? I mean, you've got a crowded Democratic field, and we'll talk about each
There's
of them.
a sense that they're all career politicians. They do happen to all be career politicians, and the sense that nobody has the kind of outsider-ish stature that it takes to come in and sweep everything away with a broom and not feel like you have to pay feasance to Democratic power brokers and the traditional political.
So this mythology, as I'll put it, or this narrative of, the disembodied philosopher king who can determine the public interest and act on it because he's wealthy and isn't owned by anybody.
Yeah, I got to say, there's merit in that. When you look at what every other politician in America has to do to satisfy their donor base and the things that they say to raise money, it's pretty refreshing to have a mayor who does not have to kowtow to.
Or it's disturbing that the only person he has to consult is himself.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, there's a downside to that,
Oh,
too.
yeah, I'm not.
I mean, it's not bad sometimes that you have to listen to people,
Right.
And that, in some sense, you owe them something. But let's not discuss Mike Bloomberg.
Don't confuse Mike Bloomberg's habit of not listening to other people with his ability to self-fund his campaigns.
This is very good. Okay, let's look at the Democratic field. You've got Chris Quinn, Council Speaker, potentially John Liu, the Controller, potentially Bill de Blasio, the Public Advocate, potentially, and all those potentiallys are looking more and more likely, I think, Scott Stringer, Borough President of Manhattan, and
Bill Thompson,
who
gets
ran in
overlooked
2001.
a lot
Right.
because he's not running as aggressively as the other four that you mentioned. But the demographics of this city make clear that he is the only African American candidate in the race. There's no Latino candidate in the race. In a city that is majority minority,
right?
And
that's assuming that blacks and Hispanics would vote together. I'm not sure about that, but go ahead.
Yeah, but who else has done better Hispanic outreach than Bill Thompson does? I would argue nobody.
So
he got El Diario's endorsement, a very strong and powerful endorsement in 2009. There's no reason to think that wouldn't be repeated next time. I said when we first brought this up in the last show that the Democratic field is too crowded right now because the conventional wisdom, for what it's worth, is that there's not room for Chris Quinn and Scott Stringer because they're both Manhattan liberals, white, fighting for some of the same demographic class.
Right.
When you need to get into a runoff, they're fighting over the same spoils. Now, Stringer got a bit of a demographic boost when Anthony Weiner self-immolated because now Stringer is the only Jewish candidate in the race.
And Marty Markowitz isn't running.
Right. I don't think that's enough that's not enough to be a path to victory for Stringer, but it certainly is a help for him. So they're too crowded on that side. There's also the sense that it's too crowded between John Liu and Bill de Blasio. They both got into office with heavy support from organized labor,
particularly Bill, but go ahead.
And the Working Families Party, which is sort of the electoral voice of labor. And are they occupying the same space?
I don't know if they in fact are. I think that Liu can occupy a demographic that Bill can't occupy, but Bill can occupy a demographic that John cannot, given his and his family's racial. And
then we get into talking about Bill Thompson again.
And then we're back to Bill Thompson again. Now, the smart money that I'm hearing says Bill Thompson. Bill Thompson, there's no way that Bill Thompson can't make a runoff. There's no way that Bill Thompson ain't the front runner. I understand the argument that you made. And I would understand that in 2012, if Barack Obama can mobilize his base, particularly the black vote, you could have the same phenomenon you had with Jesse Jackson and David Dinkins in 1989, where you mobilize a large number of black voters, they stay activated, and then they go into the mayoral campaign. I know Bill. I like Bill. They ran a terrible campaign. He was a bad candidate and a lousy campain. The only reason
came within 50,000
yeah, I know
he
can't. But I mean, was that a pro Bill Thompson vote, or is that all an anti-Mike Bloomberg vote?
Bill Thompson says that was a pro Bill Thompson vote.
I'm asking you. I'm not asking Bill at this point. You're just reporting the news.
I'm merely reporting the news. I haven't done an exit poll.
But look, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. I always argue that no exit poll. But go ahead.
And he won't be running against Mike Bloomberg in 13th that we know of. We don't know who he will be running against completely, but it's.
That was a little snarky about the mayor. He bought one-term limits over term. No, he would never do four. No. Go ahead. So where does he go? I mean, the speculation is he goes to Chris.
This is, if he had an answer for this in 2009, would he have run for mayor again?
Yeah, because he was bored.
You're right.
So?
And now he's bored with being mayor as well. I think you can argue that, and I think people close to him see that and are trying to re-energize him.
Yeah, no, I think it is. And they're making, this is really a bit of a digression. I mean, there's a real third-termitis with this. And it's also a Mike Bloomberg unique third-termitis. I mean, he was never paying much attention, it seemed anyway, and he certainly never felt your pain and didn't want to, but it's really even more. And he's really feels free almost to say whatever he wants, whether it's about Bob Steele living in Connecticut or during the blizzard saying, well, there's Broadway tickets, they're available. Tell that to
Which,
my
by the
relatives in
way,
Rosedale.
Yeah, have you ever tried to go out and buy Broadway tickets to a great show on short notice?
Yeah, right. Tell that to the people who live in Rosedale. I mean, come on. Go ahead.
It's the mayor is an enormously driven man who always needs a new challenge. And he's at his best when he's trying to accomplish something, when he wants to win. He had this crazy campaign for mayor in 2001. Everybody thought he was nuts. He ended up winning. He said, I'm going to take over the schools. He gets the schools. He said, I'm going to...
Nobody's saying that hasn't surprised and has a real legacy there.
He worked very hard to lay the groundwork for running for president in 2007.
Right.
He did not, but that was a challenge. That was something new to captivate him. Then there was the challenge of overturning term limits and of getting reelected.
So what's his challenge now?
Well, it doesn't seem to be anything city-related. When you look at his public appearances and where he's putting his attention, it's on national and global issues. It's on education as a national phenomenon.
Or gun control.
Or gun control. Or infrastructure.
Immigration,
immigration's
he's talking a national agenda.
Climate change.
Right. Okay.
Things like that.
So 2013, does his vote, does his endorsement matter? Does it bring in money? Does it...
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes. And the smart money says that it'll go to Chris because of their close working relationship. Right. And does this help her or hurt her?
Look, if you want money and you want the support of people who still like Mike Bloomberg, then it certainly helps.
Okay.
If you believe that New York One Marist poll that we were talking about, it will help.
Excuse me, money talks. I'm going that way.
Yeah.
So if you had to handicap this right now, do you think people drop out of the race? In other words, does one of the candidates stay out, a de Blasio or a Lou, or does Scott Stringer not run for mayor and then run underneath and run for public? It's possible.
Right? Yeah.
Right now, it seems to me that they're all really running. They're all really running.
Yes, they're very.
They're
very
real serious and they're staffed up.
Yeah.
They're doing some good stuff. Lou and the mayor are fighting constantly.
Look, at a certain point, as you get closer and closer, somebody who's polling at 10% is going to have to drop out, right?
I don't know. I've seen what in 2001 you had 4 legitimate ones. You had Green, Freddie, Hevesy, and Peter Vallone. So you've had, and in '89 you had Dinkins, Ravitch, Golden, and Koch. You've had
Look, if you can get
4 people, Fields, 5, and also
if everyone's polling at 20% and all you need is 21 to get into a runoff, you all stay.
Right. That's 1977 when Koch has less than 20%. Right. Okay, let's move from Bloomberg and New York City. Let's move to the state. Andrew Cuomo. Great first semester. God, if I'm a professor, I have to give him at least an A-. I'm stingy, but he's got to have an A- on his success. What's looking in front of him second semester? What are the opportunities? What are the obstacles? What are the dangers?
The fear is you don't want a sophomore slump. You came in and you accomplished just about everything that was on your agenda. You balance the budget. You don't raise taxes. You do all these things that you said.
You get gay marriage.
In some sense, I think they're afraid that the only way to go is down.
So what do you do? From a strategic, political, and a policy point of view, what does he do?
You start working on accomplishments that will matter in 2014, in 3 years from now when he's going to be
right.
What's going to matter then? Well, jobs. Elections. Won and lost on jobs. So he's put an enormous amount of effort into these regional economic development councils because everyone, for as long as I've known that the state of New York existed, everyone has said you have to try to we have to reserve upstate. We have to turn.
I live there. I know. I've seen it. I've seen the destruction of the economy over the last 35 years.
And so he's managed to do the impossible by balancing the budget in Albany. Can he do the impossible by getting new jobs coming into some of these old factory towns?
If he does this, then all the sort of the background white noise about 2016 really means something.
Sure,
if you can have a successful second year, third year, fourth year, and run into, then you're talking. But if you look at Andrew, you talked about the mayor, the mayor being out there and talking about this, that, and the other thing. man, Andrew doesn't talk to anybody. I mean, the relationship to the media is. The reporters must be crazy. I haven't talked to my friends up on the third floor.
I mean, reporters are always crazy.
No. It's an occupational disease.
Reporters always complain about accidents.
No, but I mean,
be in the governor's office. We're going to complain.
Well, wait a second. But
the same. This is part of the fun paradox of covering the Cuomo administration. The same governor who just put a version of his schedules online and who removed the figurative blockage on the second floor outside his office.
Right.
Also, everything in state government is filtered through this very tight circle of aides on the second floor.
It seems to be
He's the
very,
guy
very, very leader focused.
Right.
From what I understand, and you probably have greater knowledge than I do, during the flood, which I mean, the state responded well given the massive devastation in the Catskills region. He was presumably running the entire show.
Yeah, he was not only running the entire show. The Hurricane Command came wherever he was, whatever town he was visiting. When he shot pictures of flood devastation, they went up on the state website.
Right.
That was what the state put out.
Right.
It's like you say, it's very leader focused. We reported that when Jay Walder, the chairman of the MTA,
Go ahead.
was with the mayor at a pre-storm briefing in New York City. Before he went on there, he got in a very loud and angry phone conversation with someone from the governor's camp saying, no, you're not going to go up there and stand next to the mayor. You work for the state. You work for the governor. And Jay Walder, to his credit, said, essentially, screw you. We have however many million riders who need to know what's going on.
Sure.
They need to stand up and talk about this.
But it's been very successful. And,
it is.
and
people like him.
And then his poll numbers in the stratosphere, and he was able to accomplish that much without the vitriol, the anger, the blood that you saw and still seeing in Wisconsin, in New Jersey to a lesser extent, but certainly more than New York with Governor Christie. Yeah.
He's been very good at, the old Machiavelli line, keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Absolutely.
He brings everyone in. He
Yep.
brings people in. He talks to them. He shows them that, legislators who haven't seen the inside of the governor's mansion for years are suddenly in there having drinks with him and coffee and talking about
But they're talking substance,
Yes,
too.
yeah, they're talking
I mean,
substance.
he's a substantive guy.
Yeah. And the governor sees himself as the one who can literally bring everyone together and work out these things. And he sets up these committees to talk about what should we do with it. Now, are they the ones that do the substantive work, or does it come in from the second floor later after the committee is done?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's probably an element of both. But it seems if you read the reporting and then you look at the reaction in a policy sense, there seems to be some correlation. It's obviously not just a total dive. Yeah. So you've got a very different management style than a lot of previous governors. But at the same time, it's similar. I mean, it's still 3 people in a room.
Oh, yeah.
Even though the last 2 governors, it was like 1.5 persons in a room with Shelley, or 2.5 or 2. Now, you've got the governor in the room, and you've got these other 2 folks who've got real power. But he is a strong governor in a strong gubernatorial state, it seems to me.
And remember that in a moment like this, when a new governor comes in having built a lot of consensus and having convinced a lot of traditional power structures in the state that they're best off working with him, not against him, that convinced the healthcare industry, you're better off working on cost cuts with me than getting into a fight with me.
And I think his reputation as a guy who'll throw the fastball at your head, that he's real aggressive and, he's a Queens guy.
Yeah,
and then on top of that, he's a Queens Italian guy. I know these kind of guys. And I think that's an element of it. He, in some ways, is a tough guy, not necessarily in a belligerent sense, but he's not afraid to throw the high hard one at you, or at least threaten that that'll happen, and then therefore you don't have to do it.
Right.
The interesting contrast between father and son, it seems to me. I mean, Mario, as I remember him, and after talking to reporters, he'd call reporters in the middle of the night and in conversations with them. It's not like New York One has got this clock, 1,723 days, 0.666, that Andrew Cuomo hasn't come on the show. There's very little public explanation that is mediated by someone other than somebody at the second floor.
Yeah, and I think the governor is happy to have, the governor's people are happy to have new kinds of outlets where they can reach directly out to folks. He did this online chat a couple weeks ago where they
talk about the impact. You're multimedia. You Twitter. You've got blog. You've got print. You've got everything. You've got video on your website. Talk about the impact on your job, journalists, and on Paul's of the social media. Talk, a little bit about that.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because we actually have a whole series of panel discussions that we're putting on throughout the month of October about how exactly those questions.
Oh, really?
Social media, new technology affecting government, politics, communication.
Oh, nice.
Can it actually change the agenda? Can it change how things happen, or is it just a new way of getting a message out? And I think
it seems to you that it's the former.
Yeah. That people can, people are very excited that they could follow Barack Obama directly on YouTube in 2009.
Yeah.
Which seems generations ago now that everything
right.
happens.
It moves fast.
Yeah, there have never been better opportunities for city and state officials, for anyone in government to get an unmediated message out there, and at the same time, it's never been easier for that to get lost in.
And there's also a danger in losing. I mean, maybe I'm just getting old. I think there's a danger in losing the filter that the professional journalist provided, except as more and more professional journalists like yourself get into the electronic media, those principles are maintained, at least among the core websites.
Yeah, and look, you don't have to be a professional journalist, who gets a salary every week to believe in standards and believe in
and produce great stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these local bloggers, if you're an addict,
they're
the best.
Absolutely, and I do, and a lot of the people who complain about the loss of the filter are the people who put up the filter in the first place. So you got to take that.
So they've lost status, prestige, and power.
And they've it's no longer up to the New York Times whether something is a story nationally, or it's not. It's no
but
longer
they're still influential.
Oh, incredibly so.
I mean,
and nobody is better at reporting out good, hard, solid facts. That are going on. And people who complain about the New York Times and say that it's this horrible, malevolent influence also love pointing to, sending around links to particular stories.
Right, of course. Come on, be serious. I mean, you need to complain.
Yeah.
Well, you're from Chicago. You should know.
Oh,
I mean, your baseball team's been horrible for how long?
Don't get me.
1908? Is that it?
That's been a while.
So, okay, I'm sorry. Let's go back to the
As a Mets fan, you understand.
Oh, okay, I understand. Yes, as a matter of fact. Let's go back to the state. Seems to be one of the coming issues, or the issues right now preceding the legislative session, is this whole redistricting nonsense. Every 10 years, under the Constitution, the legislature and local governments have to, redistrict, and Congress has to be reapportioned. The Republicans control theirs, and traditionally Democrats control theirs. Republicans are out voter registration throughout the state. How do they keep control of the Senate? I know the Democrats have to screw up, but besides that,
their plan to keep control of the Senate appears to be very skillfully managing the redrawing of the lines.
Oh man, they're breaking up Democratic districts. They're cracking them
adding
down.
another district.
They're talking about it, which they did in 2000 census. They went from 61 to 62. Real smart, have an even number so we can have a tie and totally deadlock them.
Why would the state of New York ever end up with a tied legislature?
No, please.
Why would there?
That would have never
why
happened.
would you? Don't worry, there will be a lieutenant governor who can break ties.
That's exactly right. Oh, crazy! And then they create that district for Marty Golden in Brooklyn.
Right.
Do you think they're going to do that? No, they can't do it
It's
again.
been discussed. Who knows? We can debate the particular mechanics of how that would happen. The biggest issue right now is the governor has said that he will veto.
That's where I wanted to go.
Any map that's not drawn by an independent commission.
And it's not being drawn by an independent commission. We know that.
Right.
It's lot
so,
4.
Does the governor uphold his veto threat, follow through on his veto threat, throw it to a judge who will presumably draw a more fair set of lines? Or does he, as some people suspect, does he say, well, what matters is not who's on the commission, but what they produce.
Result was.
Yeah, and if we have a reasonably independent result here.
Who provides him with the counter-analysis that allows him to look at the redistricting that the two branches
Well,
put
you know,
forward.
we're talking about putting more and more power into the hands of anybody with a computer out there in the world.
Right,
There's
I mean,
perfect
you and I
example.
could do it.
Yeah, yeah. There's mapping software everywhere.
Yeah.
There is.
And I'm sure there are going to be all kinds of alternatives. I'm sure the governor's
anybody
office
can
is
come up
doing
with-
it.
Yeah, and on on the one hand, you'll have interested community citizens group. And to take one example, Asians believe they have enough votes to have
Right, a
majority
district.
Asian district.
Yep.
Yeah, in Queens, and maybe more than one, depending on how you draw the lines. At the other extreme, ProPublica, the national nonprofit journalism consortium, reported that in several states there are corporations who have quite a stake in redistricting that are putting a lot of money.
Are you kidding me? Absolutely, depending on who represents you. I
Right.
mean, you've got all kinds
The
of...
tools are far more readily accessible
Right,
than ever before.
and therefore the
Well,
ability to manipulate is far more...
Right, right.
far
Now-
less, far more
Yeah.
easy to catch.
Right. Now, does anybody care about it besides people in the game? Not
No.
really.
No, and me, bloviators, pontificators.
Right. Yeah. If
Inside
I mean,
baseball.
I've heard plenty of
I know,
people on
please.
all sides of
I
the
mean,
issue
we're
say
putting
when we
people to sleep
discuss-
at this very moment
when,
talking
when
about
we
it.
discuss, is Cuomo going to follow through on this veto threat or not? People on all sides of the issue have said to me, nobody goes out and votes based on redistricting. If he doesn't follow through, if he breaks his word on this one, somebody is not going to vote for him for
Okay,
re-election
last 30
just because
seconds.
of that?
So then if that's not the big issue, what's the big issue confronting the governor?
He's going to, like you said, what gets him reelected in 2014? I would say it's the economy.
Okay. If he can solve the upstate thing, forget it.
Yeah.
I mean, not solve it. You can't solve it, but you can begin to
If he can
ameliorate
show
it.
signs of progress.
Right. If he can do that, as an upstater, I'm voting for him.
Yeah.
Okay, good. My thanks to Adam Lisberg for joining us this week and last. For more from Adam Lisberg, go to cityhallnews.com. Next week, my guest will be former Mideast Ambassador Richard Murphy, back again to talk about the future of the region here on City Talk. Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.tv. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.